My mother called me Stephen.
Steve. Oh, I like that better. Everyone calls me Nora.
Nora? Oh, that's very nice. That's always been a favorite of mine, Nora.
Hollywood's golden age shimmered with glamour, romance, and unforgettable performances. But sometimes, the drama wasn't just on screen. Some stars pushed their craft so far that passion and conflict bled into real life, blurring the line between art and truth. Behind the glittering facade lay dangerous obsessions and secret affairs that fueled on-screen chemistry and off-screen chaos. These stories reveal 8 classic stars whose most powerful scenes weren't acted at all. Moments where reality eclipsed performance and forever changed how we understand Hollywood's golden era, the intense double life. Behind the polished glamour of Hollywood's golden age, many stars led lives far more complicated and intense than what audiences ever saw on screen. Some of the most unforgettable performances came not just from acting skill, but from the actors living their characters in deeply personal, sometimes dangerous ways. This blurred line between real emotion and performance gave their scenes a rawness that is still talked about today. Yet, few knew the full cost these stars paid, nor how their private struggles fed the flames of their public personas. This intensity often stemmed from hidden lives and complex emotions, creating a tension that fueled their best work, but also tore at their personal worlds. The characters they portrayed were sometimes reflections of their own fears, desires, and secrets. This fusion of the actors' real and fictional selves created electricity on set, moments that directors hesitated to cut because the authenticity was undeniable. But beyond the accolades was a painful struggle to balance these dual realities. Acting became less a craft and more an all-consuming experience for many, where crossing the line between role and reality was both a creative choice and an unavoidable consequence. The energy they brought to scenes came from genuine feelings: joy, pain, passion, and sometimes chaos. However, this method demanded emotional extremity that could be exhausting and isolating. It often led to rumors, strained relationships, and personal turmoil behind the scenes. This double existence was not easy to maintain in an industry obsessed with appearances. Public personas were carefully managed, but behind closed doors, these stars wrestled with their identities and private revelations. Their on-screen chemistry, especially in romantic scenes, was often heightened by real-life complexities that the public could only guess at. The secrecy surrounding these lives made their performances more magnetic, yet shrouded their humanity in mystery. The emotional weight these actors bore went beyond the scope of the scripts they followed. They brought to life struggles they rarely spoke about openly, sometimes unconsciously projecting inner conflicts onto their fictional counterparts. This dynamic blurred the distinction between actor and character, inviting audiences to connect with a depth that scripted lines alone could not achieve. Yet, it often left the actors vulnerable and exposed. Studios and directors sometimes encouraged this immersion, pushing for greater realism regardless of personal cost. They recognized that the stories told with raw emotion sold tickets and shaped legacies. But the high price paid by these stars remained an unspoken truth in the glitz and glamour of Hollywood's machine. What happened when the cameras stopped rolling was just as, if not more, dramatic than what appeared on screen. This intense fusion of life and art frequently sparked rumors and whispers in Hollywood circles, stories of passion and pain, of ambition colliding with vulnerability. These rumors, though rarely confirmed, added to the mystique surrounding the stars and heightened the allure of their performances. Audiences felt they glimpsed something real, even if they could not articulate why. The story shifts to an actor whose personal demons became vitality for his craft, revealing yet another face of Hollywood's complex truths. William Holden's performances reflected the shadows he fought within. William Holden's dark psyche. William Holden was the embodiment of the ideal American leading man, handsome, confident, and charismatic. But behind that facade lurked a deeply troubled soul. His performances often bore the raw imprint of his own internal battles, giving his characters a haunting realism that unsettled both his co-stars and audiences. In Sunset Boulevard, Holden's portrayal of Joe Gillis, a struggling screenwriter caught in the web of a fading star's delusions, was disturbingly personal. Gloria Swanson, who played Norma Desmond, remarked that working with Holden was unnerving because it was difficult to tell when he was acting and when he was simply himself. Holden's intensity came from a place of genuine pain and anxiety. Throughout Picnic, his dance scene with Kim Novak exuded an erotic tension that was almost tangible. Director Joshua Logan filmed these moments in long, uninterrupted takes, afraid that breaking the spell would destroy what felt like a private exchange. Novak later admitted that Holden's intensity and spiraling alcoholism made him intimidating on set, revealing how personal turmoil fueled his art. His fights with anxiety made him to take lots of alcohol in between takes, which made the performance and reality even more unrecognizable. The mix of vulnerability and addiction was not just dangerous, but also made his acting to be very captivating and, at the same time, unpredictable. Holden's connection with Audrey Hepburn during the movie was full of ups and downs, with love and pain as the main emotions. He was rejected by her after she found out about his sterilization, which was a very hurtful and final choice. But their acting together was still full of sadness that was deeper than the script. The reality of his suffering reached its peak in The Bridge on the River Kwai, where the performance that got him an Oscar was the portrayal of true despair. Holden was very painful to observe, because his personal life was leading to disintegration along with his career. His personal wars with liquor and loneliness led to an iceberg-like end. He was found dead in his flat in 1981 after a fall caused by drinking, bleeding to death, and unnoticed for days. However, the shining side of his fame and adoration turned out to be a haunting warning of a man who could not even partially give or receive love without destruction. It was inevitable that his legacy as an actor would be linked to the personal demons that were his dark sides, and which, like a double-edged knife, cut through the pretentiousness of the roles. Holden's reluctance, or rather his openness to screen portrayals of his inner battles, encouraged the film industry to give up their hopes for neat little packages and accept the truth, which, of course, was much more complicated than the surface glamour suggested. The groundbreaking performances are a sure indication of the potentials of pain in the production of transforming art. The more we unfold the lives of individual stars, the more we realize it was each of them who did an exceptional balancing act. Their personal lives not only give us a glimpse into the cost of being absolutely present in the public and private spheres, but also explain why their performances never fade and are always regarded as classics. A significant part of this intensity was to come from one man whose hidden life had a major influence on what were to become his most recognizable roles. Tyrone Power's story is one of passion and secrecy, a mirror of Hollywood's bright surface and shadowed depths. Tyrone Power's passion and secrets. Tyrone Power was Hollywood's quintessential heartthrob, handsome, charismatic, and wildly in demand. To audiences, he seemed the flawless leading man, embodying everything romantic and heroic. Yet beneath that facade lay a man grappling with a complex interior world that spilled into his work. His romantic chemistry on screen was not just acting, but fueled by a deeply personal and sometimes conflicting reality. During filming, Power insisted on pushing his scenes far beyond conventional technique to capture an intensity few dared to show. On the set of films like The Razor's Edge, he demanded that romantic moments be drenched in raw emotion, often to the point of emotional exhaustion for his co-stars. Actress Jean Tierney, battling her own mental health struggles, found herself taken to emotional extremes by Power's commitment. Their exchanges weren't scripted performances, but genuine, unpredictable outpourings considered too real for typical cinema of the era. Directors like Edmund Goulding recognized this unique dynamic and allowed cameras to roll long after the usual cut, capturing unfiltered chemistry that blurred performance and reality. Yet, Power's life outside the set was equally complicated, marked by public conformity and private rebellion. Behind the scenes, his orientation and personal desires remained deeply private, concealed carefully beneath Hollywood's polished veneer. His passionate working relationships with female co-stars, including Rita Hayworth in Blood and Sand, were accompanied by rumors and tension about the underlying truth of his desires. The intimacy of their scenes was so palpable that studios censored and edited footage to avoid controversy. Power's gaze and presence on camera had a hypnotic effect, as confessed by Linda Darnell, who worked closely with him and described being lost in his intensity. This dual existence, public gentleman by day, hidden rebel by night, was a constant balancing act, filled with secret romances and whispered scandals. He channeled much of his repression and confusion into his performances, making his characters charged with an emotional tension that resonated deeply with viewers. Power's alliances with directors and colleagues also fueled rumors, especially his close relationship with Henry King during Captain from Castile. Tragically, Power's life was cut short while filming Solomon and Sheba, leaving an unfinished legacy that symbolized a man divided between the worlds he inhabited. At 44, his death from a heart attack underscored the physical and emotional toll exacted by living such a fractured existence. His story remains one of the most compelling portraits of tortured artistry wrapped in Hollywood glamour. His willingness to bring his conflicted self to film set a precedent for what audiences perceive as real on-screen intensity born of personal truth. Yet, his experience was far from unique in classic Hollywood, where another firebrand actress lived with a defiant authenticity few could match. Ava Gardner's raw authenticity. Ava Gardner arrived in Hollywood with no formal training, but carried a natural intensity that electrified every set she stepped on. Hailing from North Carolina, she quickly became known for an almost hypnotic presence that overshadowed even seasoned actors. Her breakthrough in The Slayers left co-star Burt Lancaster so stunned that he forgot his lines, a testament to her raw, irresistible power. Gardner's talent lay not in polished technique, but in an instinctual way of living her characters. Directors like Robert Siodmak trusted her improvisation, recognizing that her spontaneous emotions added depth beyond any scripted dialogue. Her performances were infused with a fierce life force, merging her personal passions and vulnerabilities with those of her roles. Throughout her career, this uncompromising style set her apart as someone who truly inhabited her characters, defying Hollywood's usual molds. Gardner's personal life was similarly volatile and intense. Married to Frank Sinatra, their relationship was marked by storms of jealousy and violence, feeding the emotional fire she drew upon for her work. On location in Africa for Moontide, her electric chemistry with Clark Gable sparked jealousy so fierce Sinatra famously flew in repeatedly, trying to control a situation that was beyond control. Even the likes of Grace Kelly, who were the royalty of Hollywood, regarded with great astonishment the fact that Gardner had completely rejected inhibition and was feeling her way through her sensuality and emotions. The director of the movie, John Ford, decided on the course of action that a scene of a rain-plastered hug between the two actors, Gardner and Gable, would be shown for 15 minutes without interruption, which displayed the power of their attraction. A tension so real that it could not be cut off. During the breaks, the crew members would talk in whispers about the off-screen connections that the actors had, and that made the actors' on-frame moments better by giving them a strong undercurrent. Gardner's zest for life was not just restricted to the camera, but also stretched to liquor and many lovers, thus leading to a notoriety that became colossal, especially after her move to Spain. The film The Barefoot Contessa, where she took the role of a gypsy dancer alluring a millionaire, was so much entwined with her life that it became what one could call autobiographical. Bogart called her the only actress who, out of all the others, had truly lived her characters' lives, and thus she lent her acting the highest possible degree of truth. That is to say, Gardner was a brilliant actress, but her life was always entangled with vices and loneliness. She passed away alone in London at the age of 67, a mere remnant of the incandescent woman who had once shone so brightly. Nevertheless, the long-lasting films of hers still testify to a woman who lived every second as if it was the last, and with an intensity that not many dared. The extreme truthfulness of her portrayal gave her the chance to bring about the next generation of actors who were going to be unafraid to draw from life for their performances and thus attain the same treat of being real. Yet, this path of authentic intensity was also trodden by another powerhouse actress, known as much for her fierce talent as for her commanding presence. Off-screen, Bette Davis challenged norms and terrified those who worked with her, creating cinema that demanded respect and silence. Bette Davis's relentless power. Bette Davis was more than an actress. She was a force of nature who conquered every scene with a raw intensity that intimidated co-stars and crew alike. Her portrayal of Mildred Rogers in Of Human Bondage was so fierce and visceral that it forever changed the landscape of cinema. Leslie Howard, her co-star, often begged for breaks amid her onslaught of emotion. Davis's famous verbal assaults on Philip were largely improvised, rooted in a deep personal rage toward a system bent on controlling her. Studios struggled to contain this formidable woman. Davis repeatedly clashed with Warner Brothers chief Jack Warner, demanding creative control and challenging the roles she was offered. After missing out on Scarlett O'Hara, she channeled her disappointment into Jezebel, delivering a manipulative Southern belle with such conviction that she won her second Oscar. Her on-screen romantic tensions with Henry Fonda were more unsettling than sweet, with Fonda likening working with Davis to dancing with a wild animal ready to attack. In All About Eve, Davis reached a new height of complexity, portraying Margot Channing, a woman whose vulnerability and viciousness coexisted fiercely. The intimate scenes with Gary Merrill, her future husband and co-star, were charged with real emotion, as their real-life affair blurred the line between acting and living the drama. Their turbulent marriage, marked by mutual violence and alcoholism, added layers of authenticity to their performances. Davis's legacy is complicated. She revolutionized acting for women, refusing to be confined by Hollywood's narrow definitions of femininity and obedience. Yet, her relentlessness came at a cost. She left behind fractured personal relationships and traumatized colleagues who rarely forgot the storm of energy she brought to every set. For Davis, acting wasn't an escape. It was the only way she knew how to survive and communicate. Her power lay not only in her talent, but in her willingness to expose every raw edge of her psyche on screen. Davis's roles were often reflections of her own battles with insecurity, ambition, and resilience. Her career defied the conventions of her time, proving that female stars could wield emotional ferocity as a tool of both art and survival. Despite the hardships and controversies, Davis inspired generations of actors who saw in her a model for authenticity and strength. Her films endure not just for their stories, but for the electric presence she brought, an intensity as real today as it was decades ago. The shadow of this relentless power was felt in the reverberations of her rivalries and the unflinching honesty she demanded, setting the stage for the next legend whose natural menace left an indelible mark on Hollywood noir. Robert Mitchum's presence offered a chilling contrast to Davis's tempestuous fire, embodying cold, effortless danger with an unsettling calm. Robert Mitchum's natural menace. Robert Mitchum was Hollywood's perfect anti-hero, embodying a kind of half-asleep menace that hid a striking intensity beneath the surface. His arrest for marijuana possession in 1948 might have ended his career, but instead, it transformed him into a legend of defiant bad behavior. On the set of Out of the Past, his chemistry with Jane Greer created one of film noir's most toxically seductive relationships. Greer recalled that Mitchum never really acted. He simply existed as the character with an eerie indifference that made his presence more frightening than any scripted line. While he maintained a reputation for professionalism, Mitchum's life was lived without filters, marked by constant drinking, smoking, and a string of affairs. His off-screen lifestyle infused his on-camera roles with a raw authenticity that made his performances unforgettable. In The Night of the Hunter, his portrayal of the sinister preacher, tattoos of love and hate knotted on his knuckles, terrified even the child actors. Director Charles Laughton leaned into that genuine fear to enhance the film's tension. Knowing Mitchum didn't need to act menacing, he simply turned off his civilized side and let darkness take hold. Mitchum's romance scenes with different female characters were always characterized by a predatory, almost even magnetic characteristic. In Heaven Knows, Mr. Allison, the tension that was very much felt around Mitchum's rough Marine and Deborah Kerr's nun was a source of electricity that was sustained by a very strong and undeniable raw desire. Kerr, the actress known for her highly cultivated and sophisticated manner, found herself involuntarily responding to that very dangerous presence, thus revealing how profoundly Mitchum's personal intensity affected his co-stars. Mitchum's off-screen love affairs were a source of gossip and open secrets. The affair he had with Sarah Miles during the shooting of Ryan's Daughter in Ireland was a tacitly accepted fact, notwithstanding the unease caused to her husband, director Robert Bolt. The unconcealed attraction between Mitchum and Miles was so strong that it not only spilled over to the audience, but also was the reason behind his heightened performance. Mitchum's calm and cool attitude were at times deceptive, and while he brought ferocity to his roles, he was still one of the most mysterious stars of Hollywood. It was said that he smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day and had a lifestyle that was both self-destructive and strangely controlled. More than 100 movies came out of him as the best proof of how easily he mixed the personal and the artistic. Even if he was dubbed the most relaxed person in Hollywood, the intensity of Mitchum still left its mark on the classic cinema. And this was especially so with the characters that required the embodiment of raw evil and unpredictability. No actor before him had the power to make the audience feel the fear without the use of exaggeration. And this was the reason why anti-heroes got a new definition, and the dark side of the mid-century film was delineated. Mitchum's life and art could be interpreted as a tale of a man who effaced character and self, who carried the dangerous charm that eventually won over the audience and drove the colleagues crazy. This real threat was what made his acting so riveting and his imprint on the film industry so long-lasting. While Mitchum's cautionary intensity shaped a genre, Another trailblazer shattered conventions with a seductive defiance that rewrote what it meant to be a female star. Marlene Dietrich's fearless persona challenged Hollywood's boundaries in ways that were as bold off-screen as on. Marlene Dietrich's seductive defiance. Marlene Dietrich arrived from Germany to dismantle Hollywood norms with a sensuality and magnetism unlike anything seen before. Her breakout role in The Blue Angel was so explicit for its time that several countries banned the film Dietrich's sultry rendition of Falling in Love Again, while slowly removing her stockings, dared to directly engage the viewer as a partner in seduction. A radical break from convention director Joseph von Sternberg, both her mentor and lover, filmed her with unyielding devotion, turning every shot into a visual ode to her intoxicating presence. Dietrich's bisexuality was virtually unheard of in Hollywood's early days, when admitting such truths could mean career slay ourself. Yet she lived openly, especially during the filming of Morocco, where she performed the first same-sex kiss ever shown on American cinema. This moment was not just groundbreaking, but symbolic of her refusal to conform. Despite the risks, Dietrich remained unapologetic, using her sexuality and power to control both roles and relationships. Her off-screen life was equally intense, marked by a destructive affair with co-star Gary Cooper. The dynamic between them was a reversal of typical power roles. Dietrich maintained control, seducing Cooper, a man accustomed to being the seducer. This imbalance unsettled Cooper deeply and added a volatile undercurrent to their on- and off-screen interactions. In the late 1930s, Dietrich reinvented herself, but kept her signature daring edge, famously engaging in a physically real bar fight with Una Merkel that left both actresses bruised. Stewart, by then a shy and inexperienced actor, felt completely intimidated by Dietrich, a woman who had openly lived a more colorful and mature life than he had conversations. Yet she took him under her wing, reportedly initiating him into facets of adulthood previously unknown to him, underscoring her influence beyond just acting. During World War II, Dietrich risked everything by performing for troops on front lines, often engaging in passionate romances with soldiers and officers. Her daughter, Maria Riva, later wrote a revealing biography describing Dietrich as narcissistic and manipulative, someone who used everyone around her to maintain control. Despite this, Dietrich's dedication to entertaining soldiers showcased a fearless commitment to her ideals and career. Dietrich retired quietly, spending her last decades reclusive in Paris, refusing to show the passage of time, preferring to be remembered as the ageless, immortal goddess she had become. She passed away at age 90, having left a legacy of films and a persona that challenged and transformed Hollywood's ideas about female stardom. Her fearless rejection of norms and boundary-pushing performances broke ground for generations of actresses to come. Dietrich crafted an image of seductive power and complexity, never allowing herself to be pigeonholed by the industry's limited expectations. Her life and work demonstrated the critical importance of autonomy and authenticity, even at high personal cost. Dietrich's story is both a celebration of unrelenting individuality and a cautionary tale about the costs of such fierce defiance in a constrained industry. Her impact is felt not only in classic cinema, but in the ongoing evolution of what it means to be a woman on screen and beyond. From her seductive defiance, we find echoes in the next chapter of Hollywood's complex stories, where working-class roots and personal turmoil forged two unforgettable stars famous for their fierce authenticity. John Garfield and Joan Crawford's fierce authenticity. John Garfield was Hollywood's original rebel, a working-class actor who brought a raw realism that clashed with the polished studio system. His breakout performance in The Postman Always Rings Twice, alongside Lana Turner, showcased an explosive chemistry that alarmed censors at the time. The kitchen kiss scene, encircled by flowers, was practically spontaneous combustion. Their off-screen relationship mirrored this intensity, marked by a toxic mix of ambition and passion that spilled into every frame of the film. Garfield's background was never far from the surface of his performances. Raised in the Bronx and trained in New York's group theater, he understood desperation and survival in a way few actors of his generation could. This authenticity lent his characters a gritty edge, particularly in Body and Soul, where he played a corrupt boxer drawing from his own experiences. Garfield resisted being typecast as a mere romantic lead, fighting the studios for roles that challenged Hollywood's genteel image. His personal life echoed the chaos of his on-screen characters. Multiple affairs, neglected heart problems, and political ties to left-wing causes made him a man constantly at odds with the industry and society. The McCarthy era's blacklisting of Garfield for his political associations added tremendous pressure, forcing him into a psychological breakdown. The personal and professional turmoil intertwined until his health deteriorated fatally. Garfield's death at age 39 from a heart attack followed a night with a lover, closing a life marked by intensity and self-destruction. His wife Roberta found his body and carried herself with dignity. But the rumors around his demise were well known. He had lived too hard, too fast, literally wearing himself out in pursuit of an all-consuming life. His legacy passed down through his daughter Julie, who followed his footsteps in acting, carrying the weight of a surname symbolizing brilliance, shadowed by tragedy. Garfield's story remains a cautionary tale of how living authentically can come with devastating costs. Yet, it also marks a turning point where realism began to challenge the artifice of classic Hollywood. Joan Crawford, one more extreme gaze actress, put her entire career on a public image that was meticulously constructed, but she let loose completely as soon as she entered the camera's view. Her performance as Sadie Thompson in Rain was so powerful with sexual vibes that the film was cut by censors to be less strong. Crawford was so deeply involved that she used to ask for countless retakes until the right one was found. The co-stars were both afraid and on good terms with her, as she absolutely would not cut off her contact with the characters. The rivalry between the two legends that went on the screen over the whole Baby Jane was not just an acting competition. They were already in their 50s and considered by Hollywood to be past their prime. Thus, the two women were fighting for the same ground and even some more. Their enmity became famous, with the bad behavior on the set leading to real fights. One time, Davis even struck Crawford, and on another, Crawford stuffed stones into her pockets in order to suffer during the scene of dragging. The true animosity was a contributing factor to both the critical and commercial success of the film. Crawford's private life was equally dark and strategic. Her 4 marriages were synchronized with career changes, and she was said to have used sex as a tool in the games of power in Hollywood. The movie in which she won an Oscar was Mildred Pierce, and she played the role of a mother who sacrifices everything, coming from a very real yet troubled place. In real life, she was a harsh and abusive mother, thereby exposing the conflict between public myth and private reality.